Hi guys, welcome to week 4 of our research study. Before we get started, don't forget to do the week 3 survey about building relationships. I hope you were able to reach out to either foster one that you really appreciate or to start a new one and build a new one to hopefully help you later on in the school year. So this week we're going to be talking about reflection and the power of reflection. I thought this quote was pretty fitting. We do not learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. The experience itself doesn't really teach us anything. It's what our mind consciously does with that experience and says, hey, that worked out, or hey, that didn't work out. And so that reflection piece is super important. I know a lot of your evaluators have really preached the power of reflection, but I'm going to take it from a different standpoint instead of like from your teaching practice, more into your interpersonal relationships and building it with students. So the background on why I chose to include reflection as part of this research study. Several other research studies that were based out of education say that reflection helps growth in teachers. And specifically, one researcher found that the power of reflection wasn't just in their practice of teaching, but was in the meaning behind their practice, why they do what they do. And that was also supported by several other researchers who said that the power of reflection was in building interpersonal relationships, organization, mentorship, and meeting the student needs. And I thought that those kind of corresponded really well because a lot of teachers teach because of students. That's your reason, that's your why. And so it wasn't so much as the, like, I want to improve my teaching skills as it was the reflection really helped improving how to meet student needs beyond just teaching curriculum. So what did they find in that? And what they found was that it allows for better decision making with a clear mind. And so when you reflect on a practice, even if it went really well, there's always ways to look at taking the emotion out of it and trying to become an outsider perspective and ways that you can grow with that. Obviously, if it didn't go very well, there's ways to gather all the facts and the information and then weigh different options on how we can improve ourselves and our growth. So it all comes down to reflecting on the interactions and reflecting on the practice of teaching in order to better meet student needs. And I think this was super powerful in my research and finding that teachers really connected with what the students needed and not just in their own education of how to teach. It was really on like how to reach the student. And so this week, that's kind of what your homework is going to be based off of. I want you to spend a little bit of time reflecting on your day or your progress. And I'm not saying reflecting in that like, oh, here's what I can do better with this lesson, or here's what I can do better with this, type of teaching. I'm saying reflecting on interactions that you've had with kids, interactions or feelings you've had throughout the day as you've gone through that and you've taken on that personal burden and that personal responsibility with your students. So ways that you can implement this, and they really can be super quick. You can start a journal, and it doesn't have to be written. It can be electronic. I have 2 examples for you in the resource page attached to this email. One of them is just a 1-sentence stem, and so it's literally 1 sentence. You write 1 sentence a day. You can write it, you can type it, whatever it is, and it gives you different prompts. You can choose a different prompt every day. Or you can stick with the same, however you choose to do it. But 1 sentence, a lot of times, can be very powerful. Or you can do a more in-depth version. Maybe this is something that you do. Maybe you reflect on the week versus the day, and that gives you more in-depth. And again, there's an example of that in the PDF attached to this email. I also, like, another way would be just to set aside 5 minutes of quiet time. And in that quiet time, we had talked about meditation. That's further down on the list as well, and being present in the moment. But maybe that's also your time to reflect on the day and breathing it in and out and letting it go. That's a lot of times where meditation is going to connect in. Talk yourself through a situation. Practice it out loud. Sometimes hearing things out loud, you're like, oh, that didn't sound good. Or you're like, oh, that sounded better than I thought it did. And so an exercise to do with that would be like scripting. Maybe you script something that did happen and then you reflect on how you can improve on it. And then you rehearse how you can improve on it. Because sometimes what you think sounds okay in your head doesn't sound okay out loud. And so that can be very helpful. Um, Daily gratitudes and struggles. Like, I think some of you maybe have heard of this, like the high low game around the table. Like, today my high was this and this was my low, and it's what are you thankful for and what are you struggling with, and just that reflection piece. Another way to implement this is with sticky notes. I know that I always have a to-do list and I put it on a sticky note on my keyboard. So I look at it every time I get on my computer. I'm like, okay, I have that. I need to cross it off. So a really good place to put that sticky note is there, someplace that you'll see it all the time. And on that sticky note, write one word or even a quote of something that reminds you of why you teach. So for me, I always write impact. That's a big reason why I do what I do. I want to make an impact in someone else's life. And that also helps me realize that my impact can be just as positive as it can be negative. And so it reminds me I need to be very mindful in what I'm doing. And then the last couple of things are just reminders for yourself. Acknowledge and celebrate your growth. I think a lot of times as humans, we always nitpick ourselves into thinking like, oh, I did this horribly. But when you grow and you have a success, don't be afraid to celebrate yourself. I think that that's a really big area that a lot of us can grow in, is being successful and celebrating. And sometimes all that looks like is just, hey, I'm really proud of myself and I'm proud of myself because of this. So I think that that can be a very powerful tool as well. And then also being vulnerable and knowing like, hey, I made a mistake and I need to own up to it. Sometimes circling back for the conversation, especially when it's involving someone else, allows them to see growth, but also allows you to reflect on that moment and say, hey, I messed up. This is what I can do better. Here's how I'm going to improve it. And just owning that, it gives you a sense of like responsibility, a sense of accountability, and to yourself and the people that you serve. And so I think that that can be very powerful as well in your reflection piece. So those are different ways to implement. Of course, you can always pick your own, find different ways, and I'd love to hear about them in our next week's survey. So I hope you guys have a great week. Here are my references for the research that I have to support this. If you have any questions, as always, please reach out, and I look forward to hearing from you guys next week. Have a good one.